nothing gets my attention quite like biblical prophecies regarding the end of time. And since next Sunday will be the last Sunday of the liturgical year, the readings for the past several weeks, especially at the daily masses, have been increasingly foreshadowing the end times. And this week, that theme reaches a fever pitch with all of the readings today, stressing the importance of perseverance and ultimately foreshadowing the glorious return of Christ the King at the end of time. And while I am sure that everybody here has at one time or another read the book of Revelation and the different prophecies regarding the end of time, and thus having our own images of the cataclysmic things that will happen at the end of time, more than likely, next Sunday will not be the end of time. However, next Sunday should at least point our minds towards it. And I suspect that for many, if not all of us, if we knew that the end was literally just around the corner, we would live our lives a tad bit differently. We would extend that olive branch to the person that we have had trouble forgiving. We'd be more generous with our time and money. We would undoubtedly spend more time in prayer. There are many phrases and songs that reflect upon this notion, such as living life as if you were dying, or living each day as if it were your last. But in the second reading of St. Paul to the Thessalonians, well, they literally did live each day as if it were their last. I don't know if the Thessalonians were putting together bucket lists and were blowing through their life savings, doing all of the things that they wanted to do throughout life, or if they just simply said, well, the end is near, and so I will live something of an early retirement, living modestly. But then, of course, their funds running out, and, well, the end is not here yet. What do I do? Well, in living each day as if it were their last, literally, the Thessalonians received a rebuke from St. Paul. Not because they were expecting the end of Christ, and not because they were trying to get their ducks in a row for the end of time, but because they literally stopped working completely and then just resorted to living off the hard work of others. And so if they needed more money because they ran out, well, of course, they should have gone back to work. And while I'm not an expert in ancient world job markets, I'm sure that there were always jobs available, maybe not the most glamorous or desirable ones, but a job is a job. And if the end of the world truly was just around the corner in their minds, then yes, on the one hand, there would be that nagging thought in the back of their mind saying that I'm going to be working this job for the rest of my life. But on the other hand, on the positive side, every day that they go into work, they would be thinking, well, this is my last day at work. And speaking of jobs that involve, something that is difficult, certainly working in rock quarries would be one of them. And in the gospel, Jesus foretells that one of those signs that would foretell the end would be the temple being destroyed without one stone being left upon another. And when our Lord spoke about not one stone being left upon another, he wasn't just talking about bricks that we might recognize today, but the stones that were used in the construction of the temple were in many cases larger than a city bus. Stones that were 40 feet long, 13 feet high, 20 feet thick. These were not stones that were just simply moved by huffing and puffing and, giving a little bit of effort. But it would have taken a monumental effort to tear down the temple. And so for anyone who saw that temple being destroyed, it would certainly have been a cataclysmic thought, something they thought, this would never have happened, but yet there it was. And so they probably were thinking the end has got to be close now. But that is a common thing, that any time disaster strikes, our immediate natural reaction is always that It's the end of the world. I know many people were thinking it when 9/11 occurred. I know that I did. But, of course, here we are today, more than 10 years later. Or perhaps if another cataclysmic thing happened, if even, heaven forbid, that St. Peter's Basilica would be destroyed. And there are prophecies out there that are unconfirmed that suggest that that may happen. But even if it did happen, heaven forbid, that is no guarantee that the end of the world is going to be happening the next day or the next week or the next month or the next year. And so, when we look to the prophecies regarding the end times, we certainly need to be aware of them, and we need to heed our Lord's admonition to be prepared and to persevere in the faith. But ultimately, we should indeed live each day as if it were our last, not necessarily doing stuff that would destroy us financially according to our state in life. But ultimately, if we lived each day as if it were life, as if it were our last, perhaps we would probably go to confession. Perhaps we would say, I'm sorry to those who we need to say I'm sorry to. Perhaps we would be more kind. Perhaps we would do the things that we should be doing each and every single day. And in that sense, it is a good thing to truly have an end-of-the-world approach to life. Because if it gets us to live a little bit more charitably, then this is always a good thing. And it is indeed a good reason that we should look forward to the end of time and the coming of Christ the King when he restores all things to himself.